To the degree one believes in climate change, and I do, scientists will say that with increased climate change in this world, there is greater volatility in weather, and the cycles are shorter. I remember Dr. Hansen 20 years ago is predicting that at a hearing over in the Interior Committee. It was very, very compelling testimony that he gave, and that's, I think, is what's happening now. You get these years, sometimes you get wet years, sometimes you get dry years. Look at Texas. It's in drought. In Oklahoma, in drought. Eastern Montana, drought. It's just very spotty. It changes. I believe there's going to be increased volatility in weather cycles, and I think that the compression is going to be shorter, and we're going to have years where it rains a lot and there's a lot of snowpack and so on. But you can't willy-nilly just turn off the dams and turn them on just to try to control it. You know, a lot of these floods are not in the Missouri River. A lot of these floods that were mentioned today. The Souris River, for example, in Minot, is devastated Minot, North Dakota. It has nothing to do with Missouri. But there are Missouri floods, no doubt. I might say, Madam Chairman, I got one book in my bedstand I want to read, never read it, it's 1927 flood. I'm told it's a great book, and I want to read that book. But it just gives one a sense, too, what the floods were back in that era. Now, the Corps of Engineers has told my office, I don't know if this is in print, but they told my office that this reoccurrence of a flood of this magnitude is about 0.2%. This is a 500-year flood. Now, we have kept records for 500 years, so it's kind of hard to predict whether it's a 500-year flood or not. But they have told us privately, and maybe that's in print, I don't know, that it's a 0.2% chance of reoccurrence. So I hear what's been said here. Clearly, the Corps should manage the dams that's in the Corps' jurisdiction appropriately and fairly and so on and so forth. But in the master...
Senator Inhofe has asked to respond to some comments of Senator Baucus, and I've urged Senator Baucus to stay here just in case we want to have a little back and forth on this before we turn to Joe Ellen Darcy.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I know it's difficult for people to resist the temptation to try to draw events in the weather that are taking place maybe in this year or this week to the global warming argument. And so what I have is three short statements, a sentence on each one, from three alarmists that you know very well and have been on your side of this issue, Madam Chairman, for a long time.
Alarmists from your side
no,
or my
they're
side?
your
Oh,
alarmists.
okay. My alarmists.
Judith Curry, the chair of Georgia Institute of Technology's School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences, keep in mind, an alarmist, said, quote, I have been completely unconvinced by any of the arguments that I have seen that attributes a single extreme weather event, a cluster of extreme weather events, or statistics of extreme weather events to anthropogenic forcing. Second is Miles Allen, head of the Climate Dynamics Group, the University of Oxford's. Now, that was the one that got pretty well a lot of publicity back during the ClimateGate. Said, quote, when Al Gore said last week that scientists now have clear proof that climate change is directly responsible for the extreme and devastating floods, storms, and droughts that displaced millions of people this year, my heart sank. And lastly, Roger Pelkey, Jr., professor of the environmental studies at the University of Colorado, he said to suggest that particular extreme weather events are evidence of climate change is not just wrong, but wrong-headed. Now, he goes on, and I'd ask unanimous consent to submit the rest of his statement because it's emphasized that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to respond in this way. We have worked closely together on infrastructure, and we don't work closely together on climate change. So for the record, let me say, I don't know anyone who's blaming what happened on climate change. I do know this, that is exactly what the climate scientists warned us about. We do have eyes. We do see what we see. So here's the thing. Of course we don't know whether this is climate change. It takes a decade. It's not about the weather. It's not about day to day. One day we're going to see it very warm in the winter, I assure you, and one day we're going to see it very cold. The last time it was cold somewhere here. I remember I think you built an igloo outside and invited Al Gore to come there. In the meantime, we were supposed to have the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. It was so hot up there that they had to import snow. The bottom line is, we don't know now. We will only know looking back on the decade. So I do agree with what they're saying, and I do agree with what you're saying, because I don't think that on our side we're alarmists. I think what we're saying is, keep an eye on this. This is what it looks like is happening, but you can't really tell until you get a decade out. I hope that we're not going to ask any of our panelists to respond to the issue of climate change. This was my colleague giving his opinion, which I value greatly, because Max Baucus doesn't say things without a lot of thought. But so be it. We are divided on the panel. I
Well,
think
I
we
would
have to
also
accept that.
comment that 2 of Al Gore's speeches in New York were canceled because of snowstorms up there, too. So I think we're pretty much in agreement
Yeah.
on that.
Extreme weather is what was predicted. We will now